Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We have some brand new start deck reveals today. Not full deck list, but we did get a couple cards here and there. I think about two from each of the start decks, and they're looking pretty good. The hype is definitely building for these start decks that are coming out on June 6th. I would say for what we have to show today, out of I think 4 SRs, 3 of them are definitely impactful and might dictate and change the meta. So first off, we got Shanks here, 9 cost, 10k power. 4 Emperors and Red Hair Pirates. This card has -3 cost in your hand if your opponent has a character with an original power of 8,000 or more. On play, if your leader has the Red Hair Pirates type or is Uta, your leader gains plus 2k power until the end of your opponent's next end phase. Shanks is just becoming Whitebeard 2.0. If people played in OPO2 and OPO3, they understand Whitebeard back then. This is pretty comparable to the Whitebeard that already exists, the 9-drop 10k that gives your leader plus 2k. This card is great. I don't know if it's a 4 of, definite 2 to 3 of in my mind. But the real fact that this card can become a 6 cost in your hand if your opponent has a character of 8k or more, which is going to be pretty common. That, especially in this meta, where you got blue-purple Luffy, you have purple-black Luffy that can ramp up to that higher cost. The only thing this might not be super relevant against is green-purple. In terms of just cheating the card out, the other effect is still great. Like, you would probably still run it just for that, most likely. But in a meta where you're going to have a lot of top-end cards, because this even circumvents Black Teach, which is arguably your worst, maybe not your worst, but one of your worst matchups because of the negation of on-play effects. So the fact that in the Teach matchup, this becomes a 6-cost unit that you can play out, you wouldn't get the on-play effect, but you're still getting out a big body for super cheap. And against a lot of decks, assuming you go second, you can probably get this out on your 8-dawn turn because there are a fair amount of 7-cost characters that are 8k power. I think this card is really good. Shanks is becoming even more tanky, which makes sense that it's the route they decide to go due to the nature of the deck and the nature of the leader skill. It's just naturally tanky, can get to late game very safely. I think this card makes a lot of sense to be an addition. Definitely going to be, in my mind, a 2 or 3 of, two or three of for sure. Yeah, they cooked with this art. Plus, just look at the art. This art is pretty fire. I can only imagine what it looks like in person. But yeah, good card. And next up for Shanks, or the Shanks start deck specifically, we got a Monkey D. Luffy, 1 cost, 2k power. It's got the film type, so a little support for film. Don't see that too often. Supernova and Straw Hat. Activate main, you may rest 1 Dawn and this character. Give up to one of your opponent's characters -1k power for the turn. I don't think it's bad. You see effects like this in Black a little bit, where you have a card that will rest itself and the Dawn and gives like -2 cost or -1 cost, something like that. Essentially Red's version of that. If you build a red deck that is pretty centered to control, I could see you running this, but I don't think there's too many decks that would make use of this right now, maybe in the future. But if you want to lean pretty heavy into control, you could definitely include this as a card. It's not a bad card, not crazy. It's a common for the start deck, so it falls pretty in line with, I think, expectations there. Next up, we got another big hitter in Law and Beppo. This is one of the SRs for Bonnie. 10 cost, 11k power. It's got Minx type, it's got Supernova type, and it's got Heart Pirates type. Not only is it support for Supernova, and it's also support for Carrot. Maybe if we get another green type of Law leader in the future, it'll be Heart Pirate support for that. I know red-green Law exists, but it's not played too often. On play, rest up to one of your opponent's characters. It will not become active in your opponent's next refresh phase. Then if your opponent has 2 or more rested characters, your leader gains plus 2k power until the end of your opponent's next end phase. It is essentially a mini Dofi, but has a little bit of a difference because now you can just target whatever character. Previously with Dofi, you could play around it where you wouldn't swing characters you don't want to get stunned if you expect a Dofi to come onto the board. This circumvents that because you can target an individual character and lock it down. And then it also has the additional plus 2k to lead if your opponent has 2 or more rested characters. I think it's a good card. Definitely, in my mind, will probably phase out Dofi from Bonnie specifically. Just one thing to make note of as well is these effects that say end of opponent's next end phase for this card and the Shanks. You see other effects that say until the start of your next turn. In my mind, these are strictly just worse than that. Due to the extra turn Luffy, it won't apply for that additional turn. It'll cut off the 2k power for that, just to make note of. But Yeah, I think this card can be really good. Probably ran in Bonnie because now it's a searchable top end. Kid has been the only searchable top end for Supernova since literally set 1. So now that you have this card, I think it's ran. It's got a good stat line, 10-11, beats Dofi at 10-10. You don't get as big of a board stun, but you can argue you don't need it if your leader's becoming a 7k leader. So I think this is a good card. In my mind, I've been looking at the Bonnie start deck for support for Green Yellow Law because that is like one of my favorite main decks. I think this has potential in Green Yellow Law because it becomes a super big body. It's pretty easy to get a Cavendish or a Smoker on board to get a Dawn refresh if you want to use leader skill. I think you could see it as a replacement for Kid overall because the difference between an 8k leader and a 7k leader is it's impactful, but I don't think it's crazy to say that it's not a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. Just something to think about. I think this card is definitely viable. You'll definitely see it ran for sure. And the art goes pretty hard too. I think it's a good idea to kind of get the mix of characters. That way you hit more types to support additional decks. And then the other Bonnie card we got revealed today is a X-Drake, 5 cost, 5k power, Supernova Navy Drake Pirates, 2k counter. Probably the more impactful part of this card is the 2k counterpart, but the on-play effect, if your leader is Supernova type, rest up to one of your opponent's cost 5 or lower characters. Then at the end of this turn, set up to one of your Dawn is active. I think Bonnie 100% runs this card because it lets you rest a character early game to deny your opponent life resources, which is pretty nice. And then it just sets you up for your end of turn skills. So you got kind of two birds with one stone here. Technically, you could argue 3 because it's a 2k counter. Supernova's only got the 2 Apu 2k counters in green specifically, to my knowledge. The yellow side of things has the beige and the X-Drake. So I think this card is pretty good. You know, it's a body that can be played out. So if it needs to swing, it's got the stat line for it. It's 2k counter, you know, rest your opponent's character and just sets up Bonnie's leader skill. Very solid card. Probably ran 100%. Next up, diving into Buggy, we got Buggy character, SR, 4 cost, 1k power, 1k counter. Activate main, you may discard 1 card and send this character to the trash. If your leader is Buggy, play up to 1 cost 6 or lower cross skill type character card from your hand. In my mind, this is kind of dictating Buggy to start going second. That way you can just play this on curve and get a 6 cost character out on your forward on turn. The one thing to make note of with Buggy is your hand size might be a bit low because you're discarding a lot of cards to cheat out characters. So you're essentially going -2 most of the time to... I mean, you could even argue the turn you play this, you're going -3 because you play this out, you use the skill to addition 1 card, and then you play the 1 card from hand. So you're down 3 cards. So at that point in time, I think you would be, if you take your first life, you'll be at like 4 cards in hand. You're ramping. It's a little costly of a ramp. I don't think this card is crazy, but maybe it just pushes Buggy to go fast enough to the point where they kind of become glass cannony a little bit. Not bad. I think you probably run this card, but I'm not a Buggy player, so I don't quite know what the rest of the deck will look like. Although you could argue this card will help with that issue of hand size because we got Alvida, 4 cost, 5k, and 1k counter. If you have 2 or more characters with an original cost of 5 or more, this character gets +1 cost, so it becomes a 5k, becomes a little bit nicer against black decks, so you can not be removed as easily. On play, if your leader is Buggy, draw 3, trash 2. So it's not bad. You got good hand filter there. Draw 3, trash 2 is very good because you're digging 3 cards deep instead of, you know, draw 2, trash 1. This is just objectively better. It's not bad. You probably run this. Just a good quality card. Yeah. Going second looks kind of nice now because you have this option to filter your hand before your upcoming 6 Dawn turn. Or you got this option in case you just want to accelerate the game state. Not bad cards at all for Buggy. This will be suspect a little bit in my mind, but it kind of depends on the other support that you see. And next up, we got Yamato support. This is a 1 cost, 0 power SR. We've been seeing a fair amount of those coming out recently that have additional effects in top of just the search because this is a searcher. So 2 Dawn attached, your turn, this character gains +3k power, and then on play, look at top 5, grab up to 1 Wano type card with a cost of 2 or more. So they are isolating that a little bit. So you can't use this card to then grab your other searchers in the deck since you also have the Otama searcher for Wano, I believe, and then the Momonosuke as well, which is a searcher. So you can't use this searcher to grab other searchers, unlike the other 2 searchers. And then put the remaining to the bottom of the deck. I think this card is a great addition for Yamato specifically because Yamato can make use of their second part of the leader skill to attach to Dawn, two characters. So this card becomes a viable swinger in the early game where you can use leader skill, attach to Dawn here, becomes a 5k body. You're getting double value out of a card that you normally wouldn't really get any value from. Very good card. You know, deck could run 12 searchers now if it really wants to. I don't know if it would, but if it wants to, it could run 12. And then lastly, for the reveals, we have Izo. 2 costs, 1k power, Wano Country and former Whitebeard Pirates. Dawn times 2, essentially, well, 2 Dawn attached. This character gains blocker. I don't know if this card can... If, like, 10 cost Teach were to target this, I don't know if it loses blocker because it gains blocker. I would need a ruling check on that because I know the shopper that Dawn minuses to gain blocker doesn't lose blocker from that. I don't know if this is the same way, but it's just something to think about. And then on play, if you're Wano Country type leader, your Wano Country type leader gains banish for the turn. This is pretty much a better Onami in my mind because not only can you play it out to get the banish for your leaders, you're going double attack banish, which is always strong, but it becomes a defensive card afterwards to soak up a hit where Yamato doesn't really want to be taking too many hits because it is a 4-life leader. It becomes a little glass cannon-y, so you got the defense for that. Granted, it doesn't have a trigger effect like Onami to pop a 5 cost or less out of life, but I think you would rather take the guaranteed defense over the potential threat removal. So really good card for Yamato. You probably run this. And it's a 2 cost, so you play this out, you know, on curve super early. Not bad. And it can also be good late game. Late game, 2 cost blocker, game banish. If your opponent, you know, has the life to get banished, then yeah. But these reveals are all looking pretty strong. You know, Yamato is looking good. Buggy, a little questionable, but not bad. X-Drake's great 2k counter. I think this Law and Beppo has potential. This card, maybe if you run a super control style deck, has potential. And then this Shanks, definitely being ran in Shanks. At least is a 2 of. Maybe not a 4 of, like I said, but at least a 2 of. This card is really strong. And just one more thing. We got this little Inarashi character for set 12. 6 cost, 7k power. It's Mink support. Activate main and rest this character up to one of your opponent's arrested characters with a cost of 5 or less will not become active in your opponent's next refresh phase. It's kind of like a worse character in my mind. Granted, you can use this against Teach since it's an activate main. But yeah, it's not bad. I think it's okay. But yeah, aside from that, those are the card reveals for the start decks today. I was actually pleasantly surprised because I didn't believe that we were going to get any more additional reveals until Friday, because it seemed like they were sort of setting it up where they're going to do a wave of reveals every single Friday so that there's 1 week left before the official release date. But the fact that we got 2 cards today is really nice. Maybe we'll get, or 2 cards for each start deck today. Maybe we'll get additional 2 for each more tomorrow. We'll see. But yeah, honestly, so far, the only miss, if you want to count as a miss, would be Buggy in my mind. Everything else is very viable. So let me know what you guys think. For me personally, Law and Beppo is probably my biggest excitement from these just because Green Yellow Law. But yeah, let me know what you guys find exciting. Let me know how you might incorporate these into your decks. And we'll keep looping back here for when we get more reveals. Other than that, thanks for checking out the video, and we'll catch you later. Peace.